First of all, I'm going to say that a lot of you know probably all of this or much of it as much or better than I do. So I hope you just can enjoy the ride a little bit and feel free to correct me on some of this stuff if I get it wrong. But I'm hoping that we can all just appreciate the amazing amount of biodiversity in Palos Verdes. So this started off, Cindy Akiyama asked me if I'd give a presentation to the Land Conservancy Nature Walk leaders on this topic of what animals might you see if you're in Palos Verdes, whether it's in your own yard or in a park or at the beach or even hopefully at the Land Conservancy on some trails. And so that's where all of these pictures have come from, for the most part, in Palos Verdes. And I'm going to go from insects to mammals. And it's definitely not exhaustive. I'm not hitting everything that's out here possibly, but I'm trying to just do a little overview of stuff that you may actually see, and especially see if you're like all of you great birders using binoculars or spotting scopes and looking closely. So our first critter is the monarch butterfly, probably the most well-known butterfly in North America. And we're still seeing monarchs around even now. Sorry about that, Martin. We're still seeing monarch butterflies in February. We've got a lot of swallowtail butterflies in Palos Verdes. There's three kinds: the western tiger, the giant, and the anise swallowtail. A little bit smaller one that you probably all see all the time is the mourning cloak. This one is a real aggressive butterfly. They'll set up a territory and they will push out other butterflies, dragonflies, birds, and sometimes even humans. They'll come up and almost land on you. They're so aggressive. And as you guys know, butterflies often look very differently on the underwing than the top wing. So that's the mourning cloak underwing. And then we've got the red admiral, and we've got the painted lady. This is the one that was migrating by the thousands from the south up through the north recently here in Palos Verdes. This is the painted lady underwing. We got this Sarah orange tip, real beautiful little butterfly. And then we got these whites. This is the cabbage white, the one that you see fluttering around the wild radish and stuff. And then this checkered white. I'm told, I think that if you're trying to ID the whites, if it's on the ground like this, it likely might be the checkered. And orange sulfurs, which are pretty much the same size as the whites, only obviously yellow-orange color. And then these little guys that I always used to think were moths, and they're kind of like a moth-butterfly combo. They're called skippers. We've got lots of different skippers in Palos Verdes. This is the fiery. This is the checkered skipper. This is the umber. This one's called the dusky funereal wing. And you can see this in this picture. They've got these kind of hooks on their antennae, which is kind of characteristic, and also kind of a hairy body, which is sort of uncharacteristic to the butterflies, but more like the moths. I took this one at Ocean Trails in the reserve. This is a gray hair streak, another real pretty little butterfly. And then we're getting into the blues. These are the ones that are about the size of your thumbnail. This is the Akmon blue and the marine blue. And today, some of you already heard this, but today I had kind of an exciting thing happen. I was out in the Chandler Preserve, and I was telling some people that this is the time of year when, if we were so lucky, the extremely rare Palos Verdes blue butterfly emerges, they would probably be flying around maybe deerweed or maybe rattlepod. And I pointed out a rattlepod and saw a Palos Verdes blue, which is, for me at first, I've never seen, that's a lifer butterfly for me. And it is, as you know, extremely rare. And this is a real testament to the work that the Palos Verdes Peninsula Land Conservancy has been doing to restore habitat at Chandler and to provide a place for these very, very rare butterflies to possibly thrive. So this is very good news today. I was pretty excited. We have some invasive, or I guess I'd say non-native. I'm not sure they're causing too much damage, but these are Gulf fritillaries. If you've got passion flower vine in your yard, you probably have Gulf fritillaries. You don't need to be in Palos Verdes for that, but As you know, many of these things are found all throughout Southern California, maybe California. This is the Gulf fritillary, a really pretty butterfly. Here's the upper wing. And when we were doing that butterfly count, Deanna, who happens to be an eagle eye spotting birds and butterflies and stuff, said to me in our yard, "Oh, that's a weird look. What's that butterfly?" And we chased it down, and it's a zebra longwing. And the man that I forgot his name right now, but he ran the butterfly count, told me that it's possible it was a first recording in California. If not, there might have been one in 1939. So it was a pretty cool finding, especially on the butterfly count day. That's a gorgeous little butterfly. And I believe when we visited you, Martin, we saw this butterfly in Texas. It's a really pretty one. Then on to another group of animals, the dragonflies and the damselflies. There's all kinds. I'm only going to show you a couple pictures. This is a blue dasher. And this one is a neon skimmer. These, as we're going to hear from Kim Moore, I guess, next month or something, we're going to hear how amazing these animals are as well. They're really something. And I love them because they eat mosquitoes. And then similar to the dragonflies are the smaller, much more delicate damselflies. And this one is called the vivid dancer. Quite elegant little insect. And of course, we've got many different kinds of bees. I'm skipping the honeybee, but this is one of the bumblebees and getting the pollen off of that rock purslane. But I think this is my favorite bee. It's the valley carpenter bee. And if you see these big, slow flying black bees, they're kind of bumbling around. You usually see the black ones. Those are the females. This is the male valley carpenter bee. It looks kind of like a teddy bear to me. They're really neat. And they're not very aggressive at all. On to amphibians. We don't get a whole heck of a lot of amphibians in Palos Verdes, but when it's really raining a lot, especially around Christmas time, we have found these little salamanders on our road when the road's really wet, and they are black-bellied slender salamanders. They are the same size as a big earthworm. And the first time I saw one, I was kind of being weird, picking up the earthworms and throwing them back in our garden off the road. And I picked up this earthworm and he started looking at me. So I realized it wasn't an earthworm, and then realized how closely you have to look for these little guys. But they live year round in the earthworm, in the ground, in I guess earthworm holes or something. And when it rains, they come out to mate, similar to other salamanders. So we do have a salamander in Palos Verdes. And then, of course, real tiny little frogs. I used to call them all tree frogs, but I guess it's a Pacific chorus frog, is another amphibian that we have. They're really very small, and they've got a big voice. And then, unfortunately, I think we have these guys, the bullfrogs. This is one that was recently a tadpole, becoming a bullfrog adult. And as you all probably know, they are very hard on our native amphibians, fish, birds, probably reptiles. They're very hard on pretty much anything they can eat. And they're kind of pushing out a lot of our native species in the rivers and streams. And then on to reptiles. And Palos Verdes does have a rattlesnake, Western Pacific rattlesnake. I took this picture in Philly Orem Reserve, if you're familiar with that. And it was maybe 6 or 8 inches off the trail in that brush. And I didn't see it at first, and then kind of got a glimpse. And this is one of the reasons we enjoy telling people, or not enjoy, but we ask people to stay on the trails, because in Palos Verdes, they are rattlesnakes, and they're valuable to the food chain. They, as you know, they control the rodent population very well. They can be hard on humans and dogs, for instance, if you're out in the habitat. And then we do have our really beneficial gopher snakes. And this is a picture of me, so I didn't take this picture. Friends of ours called me to ask if I knew anybody that'd be willing to come to their yard and extract a couple of gopher snakes. I don't know if they knew they were gopher snakes, some big snakes that had gotten trapped in the netting around one of their trees. And I knew that I would do it, so I volunteered my services and went over there and socially distanced with my mask on. I extracted, just like a dentist would, I extracted two really beautiful, really large gopher snakes. And they didn't want them in their yard, and I sure did. So I reimplanted them, just like a dentist. I reimplanted them in my yard, and I hope that right now they're doing their job, because we do have gophers in our yard, which we are not that thrilled about. So gopher snakes, as you know, are beleaguered because they actually simulate rattlesnakes when they're threatened. They'll coil up, they'll open up their jaws, they hiss a little bit, but they also rattle their tail in dry brush, which can make people think they're rattlesnakes. And that probably was a good strategy prior to humans, but unfortunately humans persecute them a lot. They're killed a lot, people thinking that they're rattlesnakes. They're very valuable for controlling rodents. We have another very valuable snake for the ecosystem. This is the California king snake. I took this picture on Burma Road, just past the gates there at Del Cerro at about 8 o'clock in the morning, one morning, and it was stretched right across the trail. And I motivated it to get up into the habitat because I was worried somebody would step on it or a bicyclist would ride over it. And this is another very valuable snake for the environment. They have some anti-venom in them or something. They can eat rattlesnakes. So rattlesnakes can bite them, they can survive, and they'll actually eat rattlesnakes, as well as other snakes, lizards, all sorts of things. California king snake. One of the most common reptiles that probably all of you can see all throughout Southern California is the western fence lizard. A lot of people call them bluebellies for obvious reasons. They're the ones that do the push-ups when they're identifying their territory or trying to attract a mate. Western fence lizard. And this is a common side blotch lizard, which is similar looking. I took this picture in front of the lighthouse, or near the interpretive center, in the brush near the fences at the interpretive center. And they're also at Chandler, common side blotch lizard. This is the alligator lizard. And according to the herpetologist at the Natural History Museum, this is the most common of our native lizards. There's more of these than the western fence lizards, which surprised me because we see these much less often. But because they're kind of cryptic, they stay in the habitat. We don't see them as often, but there are more of them. I don't know if you guys are aware of this guy. This is the Italian wall lizard. This is a very invasive non-native that was brought here from Sicily by an Italian man who thought it was a good idea. He brought male and female Italian wall lizards on purpose to have them reproduce in his yard to remind him of Sicily, apparently. and this is in San Pedro. And this thing is now spreading out from his home area. And it's approaching White Point right now, which is very problematic because that's one of our spots where we're trying to get our butterflies back. And it eats caterpillars, it'll eat the babies and stuff. It's also displacing our native lizards. So when we've gone on a survey in the San Pedro neighborhoods, we will see these guys, and they're always on old broken walls. It's an amazing thing. They're not on really well-constructed walls, but if you see a wall that's broken up, then you're gonna find them, which is odd, I guess. But there are no fence lizards and or alligator lizards that we can see. And then as soon as we stop seeing the wall lizard, then the fence lizards are showing up. So they're literally pushing our natives out and they're approaching White Point. So this is a problem lizard. Unfortunately too, it's a very beautiful lizard and it's relatively big. Okay, this leads me to, a lot of you are not birders. I know Audubon Society people are definitely birders, but a lot of you aren't birders. And this is a little page to help you identify all the birds you see so you don't have to worry about their names. Okay, so if you see it, you can call it a bird. So we're going to go into the main category of all these critters. If you go out walking around and looking at nature, for the most part, you're going to see more birds than you are reptiles, amphibians, and mammals out in the wild. Birds are everywhere. We can see them everywhere. That's one of the reasons why it's so much fun to go birding, because you almost always can see some birds. And so the biggest part of this presentation is going to be about birds. So we'll start with the birds that we see locally in PV are the hummingbirds. And this, I'm sure Kim probably, or many of you could give us a presentation for an hour about hummingbirds. They are unbelievable and really beautiful. So this is Alan's hummingbird. And this is Anna's hummingbird. So these are probably the two most common in PV. So if you notice, Alan's has got the green on the back, green on the head, and the russet or rufous colors on the face and the sides and the tail. When you see the green and the rufous, usually we're thinking about Alan's. And notice this hummer is pretty much all green with some gray, and that's our Anna's. There's an Anna's with the chick. And I think our good birders could give us an hour's presentation about that nest, which is made out of leaf litter and spider webs. And it starts off really small because there's this tiny little egg in there. And as the chick grows, the nest expands with the chick. It's quite an engineering feat. It's really amazing. And these hummingbirds are famous for their beautiful gorget, that beautiful red, orange, purple color on the neck. And as you know, the color isn't really in the feathers, it's how the feathers iridesce in the light. That's an Anna's there. Now this little guy on our fountain is mostly rufous. And I'm gonna say this, that I'm thinking this might be a rufous hummingbird, which is another one that we possibly could see. Kimball Garrett says if we see a green and rufous hummingbird in Palos Verdes, it's probably an Anna's. This was on our fountain in the yard, and it's such a pretty gorget. I wanted to show you, and I wanted to talk about rufous. So I'm going to call this a rufous Allen, because I'm not positive, but we do have rufous hummingbirds also. Now, this is one of the birds that's near and dear to my heart because it's one of our 4 signature endangered birds and insects in the Land Conservancy. This is the California gnatcatcher, and the little tiny guy that obviously eats insects. This is the male, and you can see he's got that black cap, and even more importantly, under the tail, it's pretty much all black, because we have another bird that's very much like this that we see much more often that is easy to confuse with this guy. This is our endangered California gnatcatcher. It requires coastal scrub sage to live. It's got to have that sage habitat to live. This is the female, and again, you can see that black undertail. So this is a California gnatcatcher. The one that you can confuse it with is this guy, which is a real pretty little gnatcatcher, blue-gray gnatcatcher. Much more common. You're going to see a lot more of these. And these guys, the tail is mostly white under the tail. So that's one way to tell them apart. I mean, obviously the male blue-gray is blue-gray. And so when you see this brightly colored male, it's pretty easy, but the females and the youngsters can be hard to distinguish. Another little tiny bird that's really cute that are usually very sociable in lots of numbers are the bush tits. It's maybe hard to see in this, but this is a male on the left and the female on the right because of the eye color, and you can tell that. These little guys are insect eaters as well, and they usually will fly in flocks of 12, 2 dozen, 3 dozen from branch to tree to tree to tree. Another little bird that's right now very common in our yards, a ruby-crowned kinglet. And occasionally we get lucky, and right now they're flashing like crazy. I guess it's because maybe they're setting up territory, but they'll have this ruby crown flash. Most of the time you don't see that. Another little insect-eating bird, very, very active and hardly ever stops. It's just bouncing around all the time. And a bird that's easy to get confused with the ruby crown is this guy. It's Hutton's vireo. And you can see they look very much alike. Without the ruby crown, they both look very, very similar. Us birders, we look at that bill, and that's a thicker bill than the ruby crown's little pincher bill. And then also there's no black border underneath that white wing bar like there is on that ruby crown kinglet. But when these little birds are flitting around, it's pretty hard to see all of that. So, you know, it takes a little practice to ID those two differences. Hutton's vireo. Another vireo that's not real gaudy, but has a beautiful voice is the warbling vireo. And then this is a real, I think, a very elegant one, Cassin's vireo. Another little bird, obvious insect eater that we have in our yard and is all over Palos Verdes is the house wren. And we went to Wild Birds Unlimited and bought ourselves a house wren house. And we set it up in our yard, and for about 3 years, nobody came. And then one year, and I think it was last year, we all of a sudden saw some activity, and pretty soon this guy starts figuring out how to put that big stick in that little hole. He figured it out. And we were fortunate, we had 2 clutches of 2 each house wrens in our yard. It was really fun to watch the evolution of that whole process. So Dan and I sort of feel like grandparents. We have little house wrens. Another wren in PB is the Buick's wren with a beautiful voice. It's almost similar somewhat to a song sparrow. And then we've got rock wrens. These rock wrens are pretty darn common in the cobbles from the beach, Abalone Cove, Ocean Trails, those places, seeing them. And I'm also seeing rock wrens on Forestall Drive as you're entering the Forestall Reserve. Rock wrens are back, and they're a lot of times out in the road on the asphalt. But the wren that we care the most about, of course, in Palos Verdes is the coastal cactus wren, another bird of special concern because he's lost pretty much all of his habitat. Cactus wrens in the desert are doing well, but cactus wrens along the coast of California are doing very poorly. And we're making big efforts to try to also restore this bird to some semblance of recovery. And they require this prickly pear cactus to survive. They make these big hay, kind of like hay straw nests. They'll make multiple nests in different areas. A lot of them are dummy nests, apparently to perhaps fool predators. And then we get into some of the flying birds where you often will see them only flying. That's the northern rough-winged swallow, pretty much just a little brownish swallow. We have barn swallows. The barn swallow's kind of funny. They're the only one that really has that swallow tail for the most part. They're real pretty birds. And then I think my favorite are the tree swallows. The male is on the right, female on the left. They're just really gorgeous. And of course, these are all very valuable for eating insects, which we all enjoy, I'm sure. And then other insect-eating birds are our flycatchers. This is probably the most common one that we all see. It's the black phoebe. This is our other flycatcher, Say's phoebe. This is one eastern phoebe that is a rarity that's been showing up here in Palos Verdes at the Rolling Hills Estates loop near City Hall, eastern phoebe. This is the pack slope flycatcher, which is a migrant that we see here in Palos Verdes occasionally. Another one is the ash-throated. This is a little less often seen. Always fun to see these guys, ash-throated flycatchers. And this one showed up in my yard the other day, brown-crested flycatcher. I've been looking for this bird at the Botanic Garden for 2 years now. And I finally almost gave up, and then he graced us with his presence the other day, which was quite a treat. This is an even bigger flycatcher. It's a kingbird. This is Cassin's kingbird, and this is the western kingbird. They look very similar. The good birders can tell them apart instantly. It's a challenge for me. One thing, the white borders on the tail of the western helps us a little bit. That's a western kingbird. Meadowlarks, got this picture up at near City Hall, Alta Vicente the other day. Western meadowlark, beautiful call. And then of course we have waxwings that visit us as migrants. These are our cedar waxwings. And this is a plug for fountains. If you like or would like to attract birds to your yard, one of the best ways is to put some running water up there that they can get to. Virtually all the different kinds of birds. We've had flickers, hawks, all the seed eaters, all the insect eaters, different kinds of birds all come to this fountain. Fresh water is a luxury for them, and it's a real draw. Then a huge group of birds are the sparrows. And this is the one that if you want to be a lazy birder and you want to see this one, go to McDonald's, sit outside and drop a French fry or something on the table, and you're likely to get a house sparrow. These are an invasive bird that's been here forever now from Europe, I believe, England or Europe, a house sparrow. But our native song sparrow sings away with a beautiful song. And Lincoln sparrow, kind of like a song sparrow. I have often a hard time distinguishing the two of them if you see them very quickly. This one's a little more shy than the song sparrow. This is the fall, winter, spring bird around here that's very common in big flocks. Is our white-crowned sparrow. And you can see the male at the top and the female there at the bottom on the left. Displaying that sexual dimorphism that most birds have. Birds that are sitting on nests don't want to be real obvious, and so we think that that's why most female birds are quite drab, and the males need to attract a mate and show their strength and vitality, and that's why they show all the bright colors, much like a lot of other animals too. This is another one similar to the white crown. It's the golden crowned sparrow. And then in the brush with a little yellow over the eye, real streaky brown bird is the Savannah sparrow. Another sparrow-like bird is our dark-eyed junco. This one's the Oregon race, Oregon junco. And our biggest sparrows are the towhees. This is our bird that's doing very, very well. I think I probably saw 20 different towhees today out there at Chandler. This is the California towhee, and it's not a particularly gorgeous bird. It's all brown with a real long tail, except it's got this rufous butt or orange butt. So if you see a big brown bird with an orange butt, it's probably a California towhee. On the other hand, this is a towhee that is gorgeous, a spotted towhee. Really beautiful bird. We have bluebirds in Palos Verdes. This is the western bluebird. Males are bright blue with that reddish rufous chest. And the females have that very muted blue. You can see a little blue there at the rump and on the wings. And then the one on the left is a chick. It's the western bluebird. Another big group of birds are our finches. This is the most common, I think, most common finch for sure. It's our house finch. And the males are the ones that have the colorful heads and chests and rumps. And it's thought that the color comes from what they eat, because they can be red, orange, or even yellow, but most of the time red. It's our house finch. Here's a female feeding a chick on the prickly pear at Alta Vicente. And then we occasionally get purple finches, the male on the right and the female on the left, which are migrants, I guess. And I see them once in a while in the fall and the winter, purple finches. And a very common bird to feeders is the lesser goldfinch. And they can be very variable in their coloration. I think this is probably the classic male on the right, female on the left. They can sometimes look pretty much just gray. They can be almost all black and white a little bit. They can vary a lot. They're a little bit smaller finch. That's why they're called lesser, I guess. And we have another group of birds called buntings. This is not one we see that often, but we can see them. I saw one in the fall at down the hill here. The lazuli bunting, beautiful bird. We have big finch-like birds called grosbeaks. They have great beaks. This is our black-headed grosbeak. And this is the chick, or the youngster black-headed grosbeak. We also have tanagers. This is the western tanager. The male is the one with the red head, female next to him. Once again, enjoying our fountain. And I was speaking to the ornithologist of the Natural History Museum, who informed me that we are by DNA are now thinking that tanagers actually are related to these guys. These are northern cardinal. That tanagers are kind of a cardinal, which is kind of disappointing in a way, but whatever. And this guy showed up in our feeder a couple of years ago, not supposed to be in California. So you never know what you're going to see if you provide food and water and shelter. Northern cardinal, and I know Martin probably thinks so. That's a common bird, but not common here. And then a big group of birds, of course, are the warblers, and this may be one of the groups of birds that birders love. or drive them crazy the most. Insect-eating birds, for the most part, they usually have some combination of yellow, black, and white, or gray and white. This one is the aptly named yellow-rumped warbler, very common when they're here. This one is Townsend's warbler, and you can see we're looking at yellow, black, and white again. Townsend's warbler. This is our common yellow-throat warbler. This is the orange-crowned warbler, and usually that orange crown isn't that obvious. They'll flash it once in a while. Mostly it's just kind of a yellow-green bird. This little guy with the black cap and the beady black eye is Wilson's warbler. And this beautiful, pretty much all yellow warbler with the males have the red streaks in the breast. It's the yellow warbler. And we got a hermit warbler one day in our yard, which was a treat. I've only seen hermit warblers maybe 3 times in my life. They're really beautiful. And again, you can see it's yellow, black, and white combos. There are warblers that are mostly black and white. This is a very well-named warbler. It's a black-throated gray warbler. And it's only got that yellow headlight right in front of its eye, black-throated gray. This is the other one that doesn't really have a lot of yellow that I can see. It's our black and white warbler. It's quite a different bird. This one acts more like a nuthatch or a woodpecker climbing up and down the trunks of trees than all the rest of the warblers, which pretty much fly around. We have thrushes that come to Palos Verdes. This is our hermit thrush. And the other one is the American robin. These two are, there are probably other thrushes, Swainson's perhaps, not too often though. I think these are the 2 most common. And then another beautiful group of birds are orioles. This is the one I see the most is the hooded oriole. That's the male, and that's the female. And if you want to attract orioles to your yard, I highly recommend Welch's grape jelly. Put it in a little bowl, hang it from the tree, and you'll likely get orioles. They love grape jelly. They go through about two jars of grape jelly every season. And then once in a while we get lucky, you get a Bullock's oriole. And this year there's a Baltimore oriole at the Botanic Garden. And this is a shot of a Baltimore oriole. It's another one, I think, pretty much a rarity. We don't see Baltimore orioles very often. Now these are birds you've never seen before. These are very rare pigeons, or British call them rock doves. Of course, these are feral or wild rock doves. But also in this group are the mourning doves. And speaking to the non-birders, mourning doves can be confused with other doves, but if you look at a mourning dove, they got a beautiful ring of blue around their eyes and a real long, sharp tail. Whereas this dove, which is easily confused with a mourning dove, that's really common now, Eurasian collared dove, it's an invasive, and you can see it doesn't have that blue ring. It's got that black collar around the nape or the back of the neck. And look at the tail. It's a broad, flattened tail, not a long, short tail. So this is an invasive bird we're seeing a lot of. It's a Eurasian collared dove. We have woodpeckers in Palos Verdes. This is one of the smallest woodpeckers in North America. I think it's called the downy woodpecker. Obviously, they peck into the sides of the trees looking for insects. And then we have big woodpeckers. This was taken in Portuguese Bend. This is our northern red-shafted flicker, the female on the left, the male at the bottom on the right. It's a better look at the male. They're a beautiful woodpecker, fairly common, and real large. And then there's a yellow-bellied sapsucker that's been showing up this year in Palos Verdes, which is, again, a rarity, not really technically seen in this area, very common. So it's really fun to see this bird as well. So if you're heading out to Abalone Cove or maybe Ocean Trails in the Conservancy, there are birds that utilize the ocean and the beaches, and I'm just going to hit a few. But before the birds, I want to say that also if you're out on the beach, you might see some mammals like the California sea lion pup, or one of my favorites, a harbor seal. When we have gone diving in California, harbor seals are real great companions underwater. I've had one come up and get on my back, basically, and hang on to me. They're very curious and real mellow, unlike the sea lions, which are very active and kind of like German Shepherd puppies. Just the harbor seal. And then we have our cetaceans, those dolphins, common dolphins. These are the ones that are outside between here and Catalina. On a good day, you might see 100, 500 or more of them in a big pod. They're really spectacular pods. I haven't got any pictures of California gray whales, I'm sorry to say. I've never been able to get one, but I did get pictures of humpback whales, which we do get off of Palos Verdes, and it's really quite spectacular when we see them. But back to the birds. Outside of the surf break, you might see a raft of big, weird-looking black ducks out there occasionally. These are called surf scoters. They've got this really weird bill, not that big white forehead. These are Western and Clark's grebes. So here's, this is a toughie, but if you see the one in the back, the eye, that bright red eye is encased in black. The way I remember that, this is the Western grebe, and the sun sinks in the west. So for me, the black sinks in the west or goes down over the eye. So that's how I tell usually a Western. Whereas the one on the right, the eye is in white. So I'm calling it a Clark's grebe. And unfortunately, I think they can hybridize. So often we'll refer to some of these birds, we can't tell what they are exactly by calling them Western Clark's grebes. They're really elegant, and they swim underwater catching fish. This other big underwater swimming bird that's very common around here, the double-crested cormorant. It's all the black ones, not the white one. And the one in the middle, you can see those white that's the double crest referred to. We don't really see that often. These are real great swimmers. Deanna and I have been scuba diving with cormorants 70 feet deep, and they're swimming by us chasing jack smelt. So they're amazing swimmers. And then the peeps, these can drive you crazy. I'm pretty sure this is the Western sandpiper, and this is the least sandpiper. There's many different sandpipers. We have bigger ones, like this one is the spotted sandpiper. I think in its breeding range, it is very spotted. This is how we see them usually here. And then we have this big sandpiper with a decurved bill. It's a whimbrel. And then this one with a ridiculously decurved bill is the long-billed curlew. Two more. On the left, a very common sandpipery bird. It's called the willet. I tell it that there's a willet. It's all gray, and it's got kind of green-gray legs. And the one on the right has this marbling color, and it's got this long bill that's going up to God. It's a marbled godwit. That's how I tell that one, marbled godwit. If you are out looking on the rocks at Royal Palms, or generally Royal Palms is a really good place to see these. This is the black oyster catcher. You can tell he's got that really amazingly strong, big bill to break open the mussels, oysters, and things like that. And there is an American oyster catcher. This might be a hybrid of the two, or maybe a youngster American, but it's a pretty close view of what looks like American oyster catchers. And it appears that Southern California may be the northernmost range for these birds. Deanna and I were fortunate to see these oyster catchers in Peru. So they're basically South American, Central American birds probably. We have turnstones that are working in the rack on the beach looking for insects. And plovers, this is the black-bellied plover. And the most common one for us are the killdeer, these plovers with the two black necklaces and a big eye. That's a killdeer. Occasionally we'll get long-legged waders, even to our koi pond. This is our snowy egret with the yellow feet. And the big egret is this is the big great egret, real big bill, back legs. And this is what they look like in flight. They're really beautiful. And we also have a really big, very common great blue heron. These guys eat just about anything they can eat. I've seen them eat gophers, and they'll eat lizards and snakes, as well as probably birds' eggs, you name it. Great blue heron. On our pond, we did, when the Botanic Garden had a lake, we had this female and her suitors joined us in our koi pond for many years. I think 3, 4, or 5 years she would come back. And I'm not sure if the suitors were the same, but we knew about her because she had a little chip in her bill. So this was Daisy as far as we were concerned. And mallards can be seen in a lot of little parks that have some water. I'm foregoing all of the other waterfowl, partly because Palos Verdes doesn't have any lakes anymore. Botanic Garden is Deep Six, sort of their lake for the duration, I guess. And that has eliminated all of the interesting ducks and stuff. So also, if I had included all of the ducks and stuff that are possible, this would be a 2-hour presentation. So I'm not doing that. So here's a mama mallard with some chicks, ducklings, excuse me. And then we have some terns, lots of different kinds of terns. This is a common tern, I think, and this is a Forster tern. They sort of look like gulls, much more refined, long, thin bills. And they dive from great heights to catch fish in the surface of the water. And of course, another one that catches fish on the surface of the water is our brown pelican. It's fun to go out there and watch them dive bomb a bait ball out like at Abalone Cove. And then of course, our famous or infamous gulls. This is probably our most common. Here is our western gull. The way I tell it, it's a big white gull with big dark wings and pink legs. These are the kind of gulls that drive me absolutely crazy because gulls, a lot of them have multiple years of every year they look different as they attain their adult plumage. This could be a first year, probably, maybe a western. I'm not even going to try to guess on that. I'm not that good at gulls. So when you see these kind of weird looking mottled gulls, a lot of times, until you've really become a great birder, you just call them a gull. This is our California gull, which has kind of yellowish legs usually. They rely very much on Mono Lake and the Great Salt Lake for their survival. Those two lakes are where they do most of their breeding nesting. And we have ring-billed gulls, and we've got Hermann's gulls. Hermann's are pretty easy because they got that bright red bill and they're pretty dark. Hermann's gull. This is the bird that wakes you up at 3 o'clock at night when the moon is full, and it's singing its heart out, singing all the different songs of many different birds. It's our northern mockingbird. This is one kind of like a mockingbird, not nearly as common. It's called our loggerhead shrike. They're famous for catching something like a grasshopper or a lizard and impaling them on a spine of a cactus or something, and then coming back later to eat them. It's a loggerhead shrike. And then we have jays. A lot of people say there's a blue jay in my yard, and it's true that it's a jay and it's blue, but its real name is the California scrub jay. Blue jays are a more eastern bird. Very smart birds related to crows and ravens, and they can be tamed fairly easily if you like to give them peanuts, for instance. And of course, we have a red-winged blackbird, the male and the female, again showing that more streaky brown color. Once in a while, you see a weird one. This is a leucistic red-winged blackbird, where part of its coloration is missing. And then we have the ravens and the American crows. This is another hour-long topic talking about the intelligence of crows and ravens. They are amazing birds, and they're going to be very successful because they're very smart and very adaptable. Getting into the fun birds are the raptors and the owls. Great horned owls are our most common owl out here, and they're the one you hear at night hoo-hooing. And once in a while, a birder gets lucky. And at South Coast Botanic Garden, in the middle of the day almost, this guy was sitting out on top of a little log, totally out in the open in the middle of the day. And you know, it's a nocturnal bird that usually sleeps during the day. So we all felt very fortunate that he was gracing us with his presence. They're beautiful birds. They're pretty big time predators. They've been known to take, I think, skunks. So we keep our cats in. We have a catio where the cats can't get out to kill anything, but can see the sky, but we pull them in at dusk because of the great horned owls. Here's some owlets. And then we have another owl, the barn owl, which I rarely see in Palos Verdes, but it has been reported at, for instance, White Point up in the riparian area. These are doing what they're supposed to do. They're in a barn. They're really cool birds. And this bird is not here right now that we know of. Somebody reported they saw one burrowing owl in Alta Vicente. maybe 2 months ago. And we're hoping that someday, if we can keep the dogs on leash and keep people out of the habitat, that maybe these ground nesting burrowing owls may have a chance of coming back to Palos Verdes. They've been reported up by LAX at the El Segundo area again, which is really hopeful. I really love them. They're little, you know, as you know, they're very small, very stern looking little owls. And then we have our raptors. This is our famous and pretty common American kestrel. Beautiful little hawk, probably the smallest one. I used to call it, I think we all used to call them sparrowhawks. They eat insects, and as you can see, they're eating a little frog here. Very beautiful little bird. We have merlins occasionally. These are smaller than most of our hawks, bigger than the sparrowhawk or the kestrel. During the Dark Ages, or I guess the Middle Ages, they were called ladyhawk. The royals would go out falconry, and the royal women were given merlins, and the men got the bigger hawks. They're another beautiful little hawk. So merlin. I'm calling this a sharp-shinned hawk. Again, if you're a really good birder, you can look at a sharp-shinned hawk and identify it from a Cooper's hawk. There's these supposed characteristics: square tail, short neck, etc. I wouldn't bet my life on it, but I'm going to call this one a Sharpie, and I'm going to call this one a male adult Sharpie. This, again, I see a square tail, and I see it looks big-eyed and doesn't have much of a neck. That's my call. I'm sticking to it unless somebody proves me otherwise, because this is how similar it looks to the Cooper's hawk. You can see the Cooper's seems to have a longer neck. It does have a more rounded tail. And this is showing what Cooper's hawks do, and sharp, they are birders, they eat birds. And so one thing about having bird feeders, attracting birds, you're also going to attract Cooper's hawks. This is a young Cooper's hawk. And one of our most famous falcons in Palos Verdes is the, I'm drawing a blank now. Peregrine falcon, thank you. That's the peregrine falcon. They're common along the coast. Now they're getting common along the coast below the lighthouse and at Point Fermin. Here's a pair. And here's one feeding the chick. Peregrine falcon is probably the fastest animal on Earth. When they're diving, they can dive more than 200 miles an hour. And they, again, are birders. They hit birds in the air. Bigger birds, real pretty hawks are the red-shouldered hawks. Smaller than the red-tailed hawks, real beautiful black and white on their feathers. They're up overhead calling, frantically calling a lot of the time. And then the most common, I guess the most common big hawk in North America is a red-tailed hawk. And again, they can eat birds too. I always used to think they were, mostly rodent eaters, but I think they eat birds too, it looks like. And I've seen them with snakes too. And for your non-birders, one of the ways you could tell a red tail overhead is you see those black scapulars, the black parts of the shoulders, underwing. If they're that real dark, that's a mark for a red-tailed hawk, even if the tail doesn't look red. But if the tail looks red, it's a pretty good giveaway. And then we have fish-eating hawks like this osprey. And I took this right below the lighthouse, right below the interpretive center. It's an osprey with a mullet. And occasionally you get lucky. I was sitting on my patio reading the Times, but I had my binoculars and camera nearby. And I heard a raven mobbing a hawk. I assumed it was a red-tailed hawk until I took the pictures and looked at him. Turned out to be an unusual one called a broad-winged hawk. So this, you can see there's those dark scapulars are not there. That's one way to tell it. And it's also smaller than a red tail. And here's a picture of the broad-winged sitting in the coral tree at Botanic Garden. Beautiful little hawk. And here's the hawk in flight. So it looks like this hawk is supposed to be in Canada for the most part. And it's considered maybe a fairly rare casual visitor in the winter. Beautiful little hawk. Northern Harrier hawk visit us as well, often at White Point. And this hawk is really an interesting hawk. Its face is almost like an owl. It's got kind of forward-facing eyes. And it's often will fly low over habitat looking for rodents probably. This is a shot of a peregrine below and the harrier above. The peregrine was above the harrier and was flying down, kind of trying to get it out of its territory. I don't think it was trying to kill it. They were fighting or whatever, but anyway, that's the two hawks in aerial combat. And we have kites, white-tailed kites, real beautiful little raptor. They eat insects for the most part, big red eyes. This is the juvenile white-tailed kite. And then we have some invasive birds like the European starling. They look all black a lot of the time, but the males can be, quite colorful at certain times of the year. Another dove that's invasive is the spotted dove with that big spotted neck. And then we have lots of parakeets. People call them parrots. A lot of these are birders call them parakeets. This one I think is a mitered. There's many different parakeets that are surviving very well here in Southern California because we have a fairly almost semi-tropical climate, so they can survive over winter. And then we have the yellow chevron parakeets. These are often seen in coral trees. They love these coral trees. Yellow chevron parakeets, really very noisy, like all parakeets, and real pretty. We got this parakeet. I think it's I'm gonna try to pronounce it, Budgergier or something, budgie. Probably it turned out it was an escapee from somebody in the neighborhood. So you never know what you're gonna get in your yard. His name was Pineapple, according to the owners. And then now we're getting these guys, pin-tailed whitas. These are a finch-like bird from Africa. And the male has got this ridiculously long tail. The female, again, is much more subdued, but both of them have that bright red bill. This bird is totally established now, the scaly-breasted munia. They're from, we've seen them in Bali, Indonesia, places like that. They're here everywhere now. It's probably from the pet trade, I guess, and they escaped scaly-breasted munia. They used to be called in pet stores spice finches, I think. The male is on the top and the female on the bottom. This one is starting to be established, probably for the same reason. It's called a bronze mannequin. And this beauty is a bishop. And these are from Africa, either a northern red bishop or a southern orange bishop or somebody's kind of bishop. But anyway, it's a bishop, another kind of finch-like bird, and that's the female. And we do have these incredibly large, really beautiful, very common in Palos Verdes, kind of a signature bird that you either love it or hate it or both. The Indian peacock, obviously, and here's the mother with the chicks. We were blessed or cursed for a few years with up to 16 of them in our yard. They were laying eggs in our yard, reproducing in our yard, the whole bit. And then we found the male, the anchor of the family, disassembled in our canyon, probably by a coyote. And within a day or two, they were all gone. It was amazing. So he was the anchor that kept them all there. Here's mom showing the babies how to eat insects. And then we're going to get into mammals now. And so here's an invasive eastern fox squirrel in a contest with a Cooper's hawk. We buy bird seed from Bob Shanman, and these guys eat most of it. It's an eastern fox squirrel. We have a California ground squirrel. This is our native squirrel on the ground. They big warrens of holes, burrows, and such. California ground squirrel. We do have another invasive thing, a Norway rat. We've got a native Botha's pocket gopher. This is where I hope my gopher snakes come in handy. And we'd have, this is the first, well, 2020 was the first year we've seen cottontails in our yard in Palos Verdes after 18 years. So I'm not sure what changed. It might be the golf course that was built down the hill from us. That is pushing a lot of animals uphill, I'm not sure. But anyway, this is Audubon's or desert cottontail. And of course, we get raccoons pretty much nightly. Occasionally we get Virginia opossums, North America's only marsupial that I know of. And skunks. Fortunately, we see, once in a while, we'll see a skunk that's alive. Most of the time we see them hit on the road. This is the apex predator out here is a coyote. And this is not my photograph. I took it off of Nextdoor. This is the red fox, which was introduced by people that thought it would be a great idea to bring a European fox to California to hunt and for sport, I think. So these are being seen. Lanada Bay, they're seeing them fairly often over by El Segundo as well. It's a red fox. I don't have a California native gray fox photo for you, unfortunately. I do have this one though. It's the Santa Cruz Island gray fox, which is pretty much, this is what our native gray foxes look like. This is much smaller though. They're the size of a big house cat. And they've made a huge comeback in Santa Cruz Island thanks to conservation efforts and removing predators that were eating them, like golden eagles and all the goats and the cats and all other animals that were there. So Santa Cruz Island now has got lots of these gray foxes. We can thank a whole bunch of this biodiversity to the work of the Palos Verdes Peninsula Land Conservancy, which I'm very part of. You know, I try to do stuff for them because I think it's a great organization. And I invite you all to come out to the trails and enjoy all this biodiversity. And I thank you very much for your kind attention. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks for all of the wonderful photos. Are there any questions? I guess people can unmute themselves.
No questions?
I have a question. I'm sorry, this is Jan.
Hi, Jan.
Hi, Randy. And, you know, you had said something about they are no longer having that lake over at the Botanic Gardens. What is going on with that?
Well, I certainly can't speak for the Botanic Garden, but they used to have a lake there, and that was a wonderful place, kind of like Madrona Marsh, which is a wonderful place to see waterfowl, as well as all the other animals and plants and birds that are attracted to water. They had an ongoing lake for a long time, and then I think they needed to dredge it for safety reasons. It was getting toxic or overrun with tules or something. But anyway, they drained it, dredged it, and I talked to a guy from Parks and Rec a couple of years ago when it first was drained, and asked him what was going on, and he said that, well, it'll probably be 7 to 10 years before they have a lake back there again. So this is all just talk, you know, don't quote me. But that was 3 years ago. So that would make 4 to 7 years from now where we might get a lake again. And I told him that really wasn't good for my event horizon, but whatever. But so there's no lake there anymore. And so they're putting all their money in the Rose Garden and children's garden things like that, I think. But, you know, I'm a little sad about it because it was a great place to see a lot of waterfowl and long-legged waders and things like that.
Randy, you can stop your screen share now.
Okay, thank you.
But
I'm glad you're here.
But see the squirrel eating the seed in the background.
Okay, and to stop it, how do I stop it? Oh, the little, maybe that. Wish me luck. Did that do it? No. Stop share, there it is. Woo! Thank you. Thanks for that, Cindy. Glad you came. All right, any other questions?
I actually have another question. I'm sorry, this is Jan again, sorry.
Thank you, Jan.
Sorry about that.
I appreciate the questions, thank you.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if I just missed this, but I didn't think that you had the lesser goldfinch. Do you ever get the American goldfinch up there?
Once. We got one American goldfinch that we noticed at our feeder one time. That's it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. It's interesting how the things cycle too. There was a time when, for a couple of years, we got pine siskins, you know, which is pretty cool. And then haven't seen any of those for a long time. We noticed this year, we haven't seen hardly any, if any, song sparrows. The last few years, we had a lot of song sparrows. This year, we're seeing Lincoln sparrows. So I don't know. We're getting common yellow throats in our yard. We never did before. So things seem to keep changing. You know?
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Outstanding presentation. I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you. Cool. Anything else?
Randy, you really made me nostalgic for my old stomping grounds with that presentation.